What is up, guys? This is Nishi from MST.TV here, and in today's video we are doing another market watch episode. So we're at kind of a crossroads in the market here, right? On one hand, with two YCSs over the weekend and Chaos Impact being just a few weeks away, we should expect to see a lot of movement on the market. On the other hand though, with a ban list supposedly coming up around October 15th, it feels as though people are afraid to commit to buying cards for decks that maybe hit on the list. So that being said, while we are discussing some cards that have fairly recently jumped up or down in price, we're also going to take a look at some cards that are sitting still and are likely to see some sort of movement in the coming months. Depending on what happens to these cards, there may be an opportunity to buy or sell certain things. If we anticipate that a deck is going to get hit or become less viable in the future, then we may want to sell cards as soon as possible. Or if the metagame turns in such a way that the deck becomes stronger or more viable, then we may want to speculate and invest in certain cards now. Either way, we want to be prepared for whatever the ban list throws at us and have an idea in mind so that we can take action as soon as the ban list drops. So that being said, let's get started. So first up, let's take a look at some Carakuri cards. So Karakuri's just had a whole bunch of new support announced for them in Ignition Assault, a set which will be dropping for us in early 2020, probably around February. So first up, Carakuri Merchant Inashichi is a rare from the infamous set Starstrike Blast that has never been reprinted. This card functions as kind of like a Stratos for the deck, searching for any Karakuri card in the deck, but only getting this effect when it's normal summoned. Thankfully, this card can be machine duped though, so there is potential to abuse this card and make some sort of link plays. However, it's not like Spiral Quick Fix where you can machine dupe it and then get multiple searches that way, thankfully. This card was actually bought out to the point of reaching $10 initially, but has since settled down to around the $4 to $5 range. This is definitely something that you guys are going to want to dig out of your bulk if you happen to have some lying around. Now, the other two big ones here are Carakuri Shogun's Beret and Beredo, two of the main synchro monsters used in the Karakuri strategy that are both available as ultimate rares. So the lower rarity versions of the card, right, like the super rare Beret, the gold Beredos, or the ultra rares for these cards haven't really been affected too much in terms of price. Each of these are really key cards in the deck since they let you special summon a Karakuri from the deck when they're synchro summoned. Beret then lets you change the battle position of a Karakuri monster, which is kind of like one of the key mechanics in the archetype, while Beredo lets you draw a card when a monster's battle position is changed. Anyways, Beret as a Starstrike Blast card is currently at like a ridiculous $35 for the ultimate rare copy, while you're looking at $15 for a near mint ultimate rare copy of Beredo. From what I've seen, the Karakuri support is actually like pretty decent. I believe the deck can now go into VFD using their new synchro monster, or True King of All Calamities, I guess, in the TCG. And they also get like a premature burial, like an equip spell that revives from graveyard. However, I'm not sure how meta this deck is necessarily going to be. If you guys have seen my previous market watches, right, then you know that my philosophy with these cards is to sell them when new support is announced, because the prices always seem to settle back down eventually. You'll be able to buy the cards back up if you really want in a couple of months after the hype has died down. Next, let's take a look at Gladiator Beasts. So GBs get some new support in Chaos Impact next month. There was originally like a lot of hype for these cards, and we saw some pretty ridiculous prices all across the board, lots of buyouts and stuff like that. However, the deck hasn't really done well in the OCG, right? Like, I haven't seen any reports of the deck doing really well at tournaments or anything like that. That being said, the hype for Glad Beasts has kind of died down recently, and we're seeing a lot of prices of some of these cards cool down. So super rare Bestiaries, if you're okay with lightly played copies, you're looking at around $40 on TCG Player, whereas the lowest near mint copy is currently at $65. Heraclinos Altis, you're looking at around $45, whereas secrets are only around $20, which is a pretty good drop considering that before the Altis were like $70 to $80 and the secrets were $40. And then finally, Samnite, a card which I don't think the deck even plays, but was hyped up because it's just a turbo pack super, is sitting right around $13, which doesn't seem that high, but I can remember being able to pick these cards up for like less than $5 a long time ago, so that's kind of cool. So I think that if you guys can find someone who really wants to play the deck and is willing to pay up, go ahead and move them. I would definitely bring them to your sneak peeks on that weekend for Chaos Impact, because maybe someone who pulls something for the archetype will want to try to play the deck. However, I think that these cards are definitely going to be among the harder cards to move if you haven't done so already. Okay, so there have been a lot of people, including myself, speculating about how well Marincess are going to be doing in the TCG. So over the last little while, we've seen a lot of meta decks actually coming from anime archetypes, right? So decks like Trickstar, Goki, and Orcas. As a result, a lot of people are thinking that Marincess are going to be one of the top decks of the new format. However, the results we've seen from the deck so far are pretty disappointing, as the deck has topped a few regionals with like the Frog engine, but that's really it. However, this is only the first initial wave of Marincess support. If you guys think back, like neither Orcas nor Goki were very strong after their first few waves of support, right? There's still a lot of potential for the deck to get some broken cards that will make the meta, and if so, we can expect these cards to similarly rise in value. So this is kind of up to you guys, right? If you guys think that the deck is going to be good, I mean, like the cards are pretty affordable right now. Coral Anemone, the most expensive card in the archetype, is only around like $20, and then Marbled Rock and Seahorse are both currently only like $5. I believe that Marbled Rock is something that is outclassed with the new support from Chaos Impact, so maybe that's not like on the top of your priority list. But Coral Anemone and then Seahorse are both definitely cards that I would get now if you are speculating that the deck is going to be good. Personally, I am kind of hoping that the deck is good. I actually have like sets of everything just in case, because I like to be prepared for what I want to play in the meta, and I'm kind of looking at Marincess as that deck right now. If the deck does get some new solid support cards announced, expect all of these cards to skyrocket in price pretty quickly. However, if you guys believe that the deck is just a bust and not really going to do anything significant, then these are cards that you should probably just steer clear of. So speaking of Marincess, Signet Mining is a card that I think is something that we should be keeping an eye on. I know I've covered this in previous market watches, but this is even more so now. So the card is pretty good in Marincess, as it can theoretically search any level 4 or lower main deck monster in the archetype. However, it is also a card that is played at 3 in Ignister, a new Cyberse archetype that will be coming out in Ignition Assault. That deck is entirely built from Cyberse monsters, and they actually seem pretty good. Their monsters have a lot of utility, as they can like search things or add things back from the graveyard when they're summoned. They also have a really cool spell that lets you fuse using a link monster that your opponent controls, so that's something to keep an eye on. Anyways, Signet Mining searches for any monster in that deck as well. So at $40 right now, even after the announcement of Ignister, like the card price has kind of stayed the same, and I feel like that's kind of undervalued. I believe that the reason for this card staying so low in price is that people are afraid of it getting reprinted in a starter deck or a structure deck, as it seems like the type of card that could be included in something like that. That reprint could come anytime in the next few months, since Ignition Assault is quite a few ways away, and also Marincess haven't really had any big impact on the meta yet. I see this as one of the bigger gambles that we're looking at here, right? If it doesn't get a reprint until next year's Megatons, I could very easily see Signet Mining hitting like $60 between now and then. But if it does get reprinted, it'll go down quite low and only retain value because it is a secret rare. Personally, I'm holding on to a playset like I'm holding on to my Marincess core, because I think there's a very good chance that I'll want to play like either Marincess or Ignister, and I like playing secret rare copies of things, but yeah, invest in them at your own risk. Next up, let's talk about Guard Dragons. So I believe that there is a very, very good chance that the Guard Dragon package will be hit in some way on the upcoming ban list. Personally, I think that it's Agripane that is most likely to be hit, but we'll save that discussion for a ban list prediction video. So depending on if and how the engine gets hit, I think that we should keep in mind other pricier cards that would also be affected, right? Elpie, Pisty, and Agripane are relatively cheap cards, so we don't need to pay too much attention to them. Red Eye's Darkness Metal Dragon was banned in the OCG, and we could very well see a similar thing happen here. It gives you an extra free body from the graveyard, allowing you to link climb very, very easily. If you hit something like Elpie, then this card wouldn't necessarily be ban worthy anymore. However, either way, Guard Dragons are the only real engine slash deck that really uses this card, so I think that this card's days in the current meta are numbered. Either way, the original Shonen Jump Ultras and the Legendary Collection Secret Rares are each at around $20 at the moment, so if you have extra copies of these cards lying around, I would be trying to move them for sure. The other cards I want to talk about here are Omni Dragon Brotar and Chaos Dragon Levianeer. Brotar, I don't think it's an inherently broken card, right? Like, it's actually pretty reasonable in terms of what it does. However, it is pretty frequently abused by the Guard Dragon engine to search for other cards. Outside of Guard Dragons though, I don't really see it being a viable piece of the meta. Maybe if they ban Agripane, you can still use Brotar and summon it out with Elpie, but the functionality of the engine as a whole most likely won't be the same as it was before. This is pretty similarly true of Chaos Dragon Levianeer as well. This card isn't limited to only being useful in Guard Dragons, right? You can also play it in other decks like Dangers and Thunder Dragons. However, if the Guard Dragon engine is hit and Brotar isn't played as much, then you're unable to search for Levianeer as reliably, right? In terms of price, Brotar is currently sitting at around $13 to $15, while Levianeer is up at around $30 still. These are both cards that I personally would be trying to move because I think there's no way that the Guard Dragon engine escapes the upcoming ban list without being touched in some way. Alright, so at YCS Niagara Falls, we saw another decent showing from Lunalights as they got second place. I think that this is like the second time that we've seen this deck do something, right? Anyways, no one seems to know what Lunalights do or anything, and then the deck seems to end up topping and doing well, and then it kind of falls off the radar once again. Now, most of this deck is commons and rares, so there's very little impact that a deck like this makes on the market. Even cards like Panther Dancer or Leo Dancer were reprinted as commons, so the whole thing is pretty cheap. However, one card of note is Lunalight's Serenade Dance. This deck played 2 copies of Foolish Burial Goods in order to get this card into the graveyard, and when it's there, you can banish it, send a monster from your hand to the graveyard, and then special summon a Lunalight from your deck. This is good because it can be used the turn that it's sent, and even if you hard draw it, you can just discard it off the effect of a Nightmare monster like Nightmare Mermaid, and then use its effect right away. Anyways, this card is a holo from Legendary Duelists Sisters of the Rose, which is a set that was barely opened, and as a result, there are very few quantities available on the market. You're currently looking at around $10 for a copy on TCG Player at the moment. Just like last time though, I think that you're going to see the deck popular for like the next week or two, and then everyone kind of get bored of it or confused or something, and then we'll see this card settle back down in terms of price. The other thing that's worth noting here is that Lunalight Tiger is a common from Shining Victories that has never been reprinted, yet it's played in the deck at 3 because in the scale, it's basically just a monster reborn that isn't a hard once per turn, which is kind of crazy. It's currently like just over $2 for a copy, which for a common card from a fairly recent set is actually pretty good and worth pulling out of your bulk. Okay, so I want to take a quick second here to touch on the Artifact engine. So I was looking with a couple of buddies earlier today, and we realized that the Artifact engine is actually like ridiculously cheap right now. I'm talking about $20 for the entire Artifact engine, whereas before we saw Sanctums alone go up towards $10 a piece. I believe that part of the reason for this dip is because people were expecting Sanctum to be included in Dual Devastator, right? Since it seemed like the type of card that might be included in there. Also, we've noticed recently a lot of decks wanting to go second in order to utilize cards like Super Polymerization and Mind Control, so maybe these cards that want to go first aren't as popular at the moment. However, I do think that the engine is still very strong and that there's a lot of potential for it to see an increase in play in the future. If you can take advantage of the fact that your opponent wants to go second, then you play this card and you stun them for their entire turn. I think that's still really strong. Furthermore, unless this card comes as an OTS pack super or ulti or something like that, I don't really see this card being reprinted for quite a while. That being said, I think this is a very solid pickup that I recommend you guys grab for now if you don't already have your set. So next up we have Orcas, which are the engine that has been kind of like included in everything recently, and that's just because the engine is so strong, right? Like you can take any 2 monsters, turn them into Cerberus or Phoenix, go into Mermaid, and then you have your whole engine going and set up, which is kind of ridiculous. Anyways, something in Orcas is probably going to get hit on the upcoming ban list. Personally, I think it's going to be Nightmare Mermaid, but I've had people tell me they think it could be something else like Galatea or Orcas Crescendo. Personally, I've never used the engine because I have really bad luck when it comes to drawing the Garnets in certain decks. But yeah, so this fear of the upcoming ban list has kind of caused the prices of Ulti Galatea and Super Rare Harp Horror to chill down a little bit. Galatea, which we saw bud out and hit to the point of like $60 to $70, is now all the way back down to around $30. And Harp Horror, despite being relatively new, we've seen at highs of like $10 for the super rare copy, but they're now down to around $4 to $5. Dingirsu, however, is the card that has actually seen the opposite effect. So before, whereas the ultras were 20, they're now at 28s, and the ultis before they were sitting at like 45 to 50 are currently around $55 a piece. I think that the assumption here is that regardless of how Orcas gets hit, it'll still function in some way, and Dingirsu is too new of a card to be hit on the ban list, so it's the somewhat safer investment to make as far as Orcas cards go. These cards are more examples of cards that can swing like either way when the ban list drops, right? So it's up to you guys to come up with your speculation of what you guys think is going to get hit and how the deck will function going forward, and then make your investments based on that. And finally, we have a few miscellaneous cards that I want to touch on here. So it's looking like the next big reprint set that we get isn't going to be here until around March or April of next year, when we could get a Battles of Legend or Gold Series type of set. Now, this is a really long ways off, so I think that if there are certain cards that you were holding off on for fear of them getting reprinted, now is the best time to pick them up, right? Barring them getting hit on the upcoming ban list or reprinted in something super specific like an OTS pack, there are very limited opportunities coming for cards to be reprinted, which means that there is a greater chance that cards will be able to retain their value for longer. So one of the big ones that I'm looking at here is Evenly Matched, which I personally thought was going to be in Dual Devastator. However, now that we know it isn't included in there, I think it's a great time to pick it up. It's a great card to have and play in the side deck. Like, it's such a strong card that you always want to have access to because it can always be a blowout in the right situation. Also, this card has already had reprints in the Megatins and Dual Power, so it's actually pretty affordable right now, being anywhere from $13 to $20 a copy depending on which rarity you want. Next up, Nibiru is currently sitting in that $7 to $8 range, right? So looking at the deck lists from the 2 YCS events this weekend, I feel like I saw this card in basically everyone's deck, either in the side deck or even the main deck. I feel like this card is a lot like Maxi, right? It's not good against absolutely every single deck, but you have to play it because it's just such a strong blowout card when you do have it against those decks that it's designed to function against. I feel like Nibiru is the thing that's most living up to its hype, more so than Dark Ruler No More, and I would expect its price to steadily climb up over the coming months to around $10 or so. So if you were hoping for the card to drop in price, I think that you should just go grab your copies of Nibiru now before they get any higher. And then finally, guys, we have Phantasme. So don't get me wrong, I'm not telling you guys to go out and just buy Phantasmes, right? However, my rationale behind looking at Phantasme right now is following the precedent set by Ash Blossom and Infinite Impermanence. So every now and then we get like these really strong meta cards that are just so impactful for the game that their reprints get dragged on over multiple sets, which allows the cards to retain value. Look at Impermanence, which was previously like as high as $70 or $80, and then it got reprinted in Dual Devastator, and while the reprints are $40, even now you're still looking at like $60 a copy for the secret rares. And then also Ash Blossom, right? We saw Ash Blossom go like up to like $70 or so, and then even after it got reprinted in Legendary Collection, the Kaiba Collection and Shadows in Valhalla, it was still up at around like $40 to $50 a piece for the original secret rares. And heck, even with all its reprints now, right? Like the reprints in Dual Power, the common in the structure deck, and then the upcoming release in Dual Devastator, the secret rares are still like $30 to $35. When you consider the fact that you've been holding a card for like a certain amount of time, in Ash Blossom's case like 2 years or something, and you've been using the card, you have to factor in the natural like depreciation of a card's value over time because you're like using it. Honestly, a card dropping by half in price over the course of 2 years to me is pretty reasonable, especially for a game that most of us consider to be just a hobby, right? A lot of the time when you have a hobby, you don't expect to get all of your money back. If you pay to play a sport or do something like that, you're not expecting to get that money back, right? Yu-Gi-Oh's, it's very specific because a lot of the time, a lot of players put in money to buy a card and they want to get that value back that they spent on the card, which isn't really the right way to go about it, right? But that's like a discussion for another time. Anyways, that being said, if you guys are looking to pick up Phantasmes over the next year or so, I'd say that now is honestly just like as good a time as any to go ahead and pick them up. We've seen them as high as like $100 plus. So it's not at its peak right now. It's currently at like $80. even if we see it reprinted, I can still see it maintaining like a $60 to $70 price point. So honestly, right now, I wouldn't feel awful about spending $75 to $80 a piece for now if you're able to afford copies and you want to play them. Alright guys, that is it for today's Market Watch episode. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it and found it at least a little bit informative. Be sure to stay tuned for content coming to you guys later this week. Tombox will be back sharing his experiences with you all from YCS Niagara, and I'll be looking at some potential cards to invest in with the looming release of Link Vrains Pack 3, even though we still don't have Needle Fiber in the TCG, but that's another story. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys all enjoyed the video and the discussions today, please make sure to thumbs up this video and be sure to comment down in the comment section below. Let me know what cards you guys are looking at or what cards I might have missed, so that hopefully I can address them in a future Market Watch episode. And of course, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button to get all of the latest content from Tombox and myself. And yes, so until next time, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.